Test, test. Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Hi. They don't need the microphone. Oh, well, okay. So I guess I'll use the microphone for people who are, like if anyone is streaming. My name is Samah, and I know Bashara. Remind me what your name is? Anthony. Oh, yes. Well, you are Anthony. I mean, you've grown so much now. And Mamdouh. So I know you guys probably have other things to do, so kind of I'll make it quick. It's kind of, I think I have a few slides that we should be able to go through pretty quickly. The title of what my talk is The Real World, and I think my kids probably I would lose even more coolness points if they like hear that I'm talking about this, and that this is a show from, you guys probably would not have watched it, from the 1990s. I know I'm dating myself when I talk about it because it's pretty old. I don't know if MTV is still around. Is there still MTV or? Yeah, it was a big thing at that time. It's like music TV. I mean, it was the only way to watch music videos. And they had a show that was based in Manhattan where they brought people from very different paths of life and paid them a lot of money to stay in a nice condo in a high-rise in Manhattan, to live together for I can't remember if it was 6 months or a year. And these people could not be any more than from each other. That one of them was super conservative, religious. One of them was super liberal, hippies. There was, gender identities were different. Like so many things were different between them, and put them together and got a consent to videotape their life, their everyday life, And you can imagine what would, like, what could happen. Obviously, lots of disagreements, differences, religious, moral, love stories, friendships. So all kinds of things that you can imagine happened. And it was it was a lighthearted show, but it was like really fun to watch. And kind of I was thinking when I was preparing like this talk that this is kind of what happens that like to us when we come to church every time, is that so many people, all of us, come from so many different walks of life, different countries. I mean, your family is from Jordan, like my family is from Egypt. Some some people grew up and lived all their lives in Egypt in like rural villages. In the city, probably same thing applies to Jordan. In various levels of education and various generations, like grandparents, parents, kids. I mean, you name it. And so I think our church here probably, if you would like videotape our church, you would see very similar to what people kind of watched in the show, is that so many different stories, again, disagreements, good stories, bad stories, and that's I'm sure part of your life. Okay, when you come to church, that someone told me it's kind of they felt like Tarzan at some point, kind of living two different lives, kind of and that will become even more important if you're serving at many different levels, because you're dealing with kids that also may be very diverse. Some of them may have grown up here, know nothing about their home countries. Some of them may have just come recently. Also, there's going to be differences, kind of again backgrounds in terms of the parents. There's going to be differences between you and other servants and servant leaders and even the priests. So there's we live in an extremely diverse community here, in terms of the church community, and I feel it's something that we need to think about and talk about so that we would be prepared for it. I mean, I think probably each one of you and each one of us has figured out their own way to navigate that system, which may be a good way or a not so good way, or maybe a good way that can be improved. So that's why I thought we would talk about it today. So like I said, we have many different backgrounds. I think of generations, cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds. We have students, young professionals, families, language differences, just expectations. What do you expect to come here? When you see the church, some people expect it to be like a church in Egypt, would feel the same. Some people would expect it to feel like their school that they went to, and would feel the same. And based on these expectations, some people may get disappointed that they're not really finding what they were hoping or what they were expecting. So the question is, do you think the outcome of this diversity, do you think is it a good thing or a bad thing that we have this diversity in our church? If you compare, if you can possibly imagine a church where everyone is, I'd say, for me, I grew up in Egypt, everyone is like me, came at the age of 25, 26, maybe job situation is similar in terms of education or interests, and they like what I like, and everyone is exactly like me. It's a very homogeneous church, which a lot of the churches around us probably are like that, right? So that's one possible image or one version of the church, and another version would be us here. And if you go to a big city, so before coming here, I was in, we lived in DC. It's even more extreme than here in terms of the diversity and the difference and backgrounds and difference in cultures. And like, for example, one of the kids in our Sunday school used to tell me that for them to, they lived in a village in Egypt, for them to get milk, his dad would call his friend who owned a cow, and they would milk the cow. Then he would go across like a pond to get the milk from from his friend, and bring it back home. Some other guy was in a church in a village in Egypt, and they didn't have a math teacher for 8 years. Sorry, was in a school in a village in Egypt, and they didn't have a math teacher for 8 years. And then you can also see people that came from very affluent backgrounds, like in Egypt or here, and again, very different backgrounds. So I think we're diverse, but there is, believe it or not, even churches that are even more diverse than we are. So what do you think? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? That, like, the diversity that we have?
I think it's a good thing. Being diverse, having the diverse church, it's like different perspectives. People look at stuff differently, and then you can get to like one point at the end with everyone's opinion.
Okay. How about Anthony? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good thing. The church accepts anyone from anywhere. Everyone has their different perspectives, but we all try to agree on one thing, and we hear everyone, and it's a good thing.
Okay, so in a way, that's true. I think when people talk about the United States, people talk about the fact that diversity strengthens so many aspects of the country, that strengthens the economy, that you have people with different mindsets. Some people don't like to do simple jobs. Other people would, would give an arm to do like any job. People think differently in so many ways, and that fosters creativity and innovation. So that's something people talk about. But at the same time, I mean, you have at times, you see, especially around like in politics and elections, that like violence between people, sometimes in major disagreement. And I agree, it's probably a good thing, but I think the big question is, are we really making it like taking advantage of it, or is it really in reality a good thing for us that is working well for us, or is it leading to a lot of disagreements and where people want to kind of basically see things in their own way, and we don't it doesn't strengthen, kind of like you said, like the fabric of the church. And kind of that's what I wanted to talk about. Like, to be honest, like Mamdouh and I were just talking about an example that may have not been the best example, like about diversity, which is like more disagreements. I want to do things this way, and you should not do things that way, and all that. And that could, if anything, bring the church down and bring services down, bring morale down, bring spirituality down. So that's kind of what I want to spend the next few minutes. And again, diversity comes in so many different ways. Like, I'll talk about generational diversity, generational gaps. Has it ever happened to you that an older person just expects you to do exactly what they want you to do, with no questions asked, and if you deviate from like kind of the way they see things, that they would kind of get disappointed? Happens. Okay. Do you think it happens from looking from the other perspective? If someone has been here in the church for a long time, and they've developed a lot of experience in the church, and then someone comes, say, college student, full of energy and full of innovation, but don't see kind of, or they don't want to hear the experience of like the elder, like who's been here for a long time, and just want to do things their own way and kind of just follow their vision and disregard the vision of the elder. Probably Mamdouh has been here for a long time. Probably he would say, yes, I've seen it happen kind of like probably many times. And I think the big challenge here is that, I mean, we have so many different personalities. Again, like we're very diverse. But the big thing is, do we have the dialogue that gets us to what you guys were talking about? Where really our fabric is getting stronger. We're getting the experience of people who've done this for a long time. We're getting like we're harnessing the energy and the innovation of people that have gotten good education here and like have seen things that maybe some of the elders have not seen. Do we have that dialogue or not? Yeah, actually, go ahead. I like. Uh-huh.
I've seen some people just agree with the adults, and I've seen some of the adults actually compromise with the kids. And sometimes I've seen two different parties that both sides are just too strict on their points.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess both sides have too much pride, so it becomes definitely like a debate, and it becomes who's just more right at the end of the day.
Right.
And then that definitely sets in, so it's definitely more complicated and definitely more disagreements than there are agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely, I guess like you kind of showed me that it might be more of a bad thing than a good thing, diversity, but it's really how like the people face it, and really how they go with like the problem, so.
Right, and that's exactly, and I couldn't have said it in a better way, I think that's exactly why we wanted to talk about this today, is that because if we're not preparing for like something, then you know how they say if you don't, like what's the saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's exactly what we want to do, is to plan, to start thinking. Like we may not have all the answers today, is for you guys, okay, because you probably, you know, if you serve and continue to serve, you're going to be serving in this church more than anyone else here, right? Because you have many more years ahead of you like to serve. And to start thinking about this, what can we do as a church to really kind of get the church in kind of like to be like what you said in terms of diversity being a positive example. Like, you know, what can we do as a church? What can you do? How would you approach disagreements? That, you know, disagreements happen, and kind of I pulled up a few examples from the Bible. I always say, like, you know, if you think about the disciples really are like the dream team of like the service. These are the people that were discipled by Jesus or by people that were around Jesus. So you could not get any better servants, okay? Like there is the story from Acts 15 about like Paul and Barnabas. I guess there was someone called John or people called him Mark, that Barnabas wanted to recruit to serve with them, but Paul had a negative experience with him, that he had deserted them in like before, and Paul and Barnabas argued about this and ended up separating and kind of going in different ways. So again, this is here from the Bible, like, you know, the disciples. This is kind of like the LeBron James of basketball, or like Tom Brady of football, or like, you know, I mean, these are, you can get a better servant, and they struggled with this, okay? And so it's something that happens. I mean, it will happen to you, to Mamdouh, to me. It's just like, it's part of human nature. And another example in Luke 9 about the disciples disagreeing and starting to think about, to your point about the pride, okay, who's the greatest amongst them, okay? So whenever you have a group of servants, even if they're the best servants, okay, even if they're people like, you know, that left everything on a Saturday and came to a meeting, or like you are dedicating a lot of time to church, that disagreements will happen, and we will all get weak at some point, and fall into the temptation of pride, and or be impatient with other people. So this is something that kind of will be part of our service. But the big issue to think about is, what do I plan to do about that? What is going to be my attitude? I think, at least from like watching people, what we all tend to do is we all surround ourselves with like-minded people, okay, and just live in silos at church. okay? That you talk to the 3 or 4 people that you're comfortable with. You just try to ignore everyone else, tune everyone else out. I'm not saying like you, but that happens like to all of us, just because we just ignore or try to tune anything that we don't like out. But really, the reality is that we need, kind of what you guys said, that dialogue where we would sit together, okay, figure out things, and we'll have, like, your experience now is very different than my experience, very different than Mamdouh's experience. You know, we all have our challenges in life, our needs in life, okay, which could be very different. But ultimately, what is very important to work on for all of us is these points here. Very simple, but very hard, okay? Is that mutual love, is that like to look at me when you see, like when I see you, Bishara, or Anthony, or Mamdouh, that I'm thinking, oh, this is part of the body of Christ. I'm part of the body of Christ, and they're part of the same body. And if I have that love of Christ, then I have the love for them, that I want to listen to their needs. I want to figure out what they need. Okay, we may disagree, but that disagreement is basically like we want to talk about it to come to a point where we feel we're serving each other. I'm serving you, and you're serving me, because of that love between us. Easier said than done, but extremely important. The other thing is mutual trust, that to always remember that that person that disagrees with you, that person that you think is coming up with the most foolish idea ever, is actually doing it because he wants to serve God. That you trust that they're trying to serve God. Maybe they're thinking about things in a different way, but ultimately it's the same goal. Like they're trying to get to exactly the same point that you want to get to, but just they see things differently. Then mutual respect. That, I mean, it's God gave you a brain, gave me a brain, that will kind of, even though we see things differently, it's okay to have that dialogue. It's okay for you to tell me, Samah, I disagree with that point. I see things differently. I think like you may be missing something, but as long as we work on that mutual respect and work on maintaining that dialogue, and not just, like you said, out of pride, just escalating things and just try to hurt other person. That's very important in that conversation. So fostering the spirit of dialogue is, I think, the most important point here, and where we listen and speak out what we're thinking, not, also not just try to keep what we're thinking to ourselves, to just avoid the problem. And ultimately, in the ideal world, kind of for things to be fair, is that whatever you're thinking, if I'm someone who things differently, that basically ends up being a 50-50 compromise overall, meaning that one time I listen to you, another time you possibly would listen to me, and so forth. So if you see that like someone is getting their way all the time, that's probably not very healthy. If someone is compromising all the time, that's also probably not very healthy. So in the ideal world that we would figure out a way where sometimes I give in, sometimes someone else gives in. That's probably in general a healthy sign that we're all listening to each other. No one person, no one is taking over and just doing what they want. I mean, there is occasionally people who are ahead of everyone else, so there is exceptions, and the way they see things that other people don't. But generally speaking, in most cases, it's good to have that compromise where, again, you do what other people want one time, some other times they listen to you. So again, mutual love, mutual trust, mutual respect, spirit of dialogue, and compromise at times. Okay, so I hope we think about that when, with every time we come to church, when you start serving, when you're dealing with other people your age, elders, other people who are younger, that we would think about these points, because I feel really this is like a very important, thing to think about, if we want to lead a successful service in this church. And many times we'll forget, many times, again, may not be a bad mood or something will be going on, we'll get impatient with other people. So, I mean, failures will happen of this, but if we want to be members of the church, if we want to serve in this church, it's always good to think about diversity and what can I do to promote a positive example of diversity here. Okay? Okay. Any questions, any thoughts?
Okay.
So,
Just FYI, Dr. Samah is here for church, in church for many years before, for how long? 15 years now? 10, yeah, 10. I'm here for 25, that's why I can't remember. But anyways, Dr. Samah is a blessing to the church. Is serving as a board member before, serving in Sunday school for a time, and now he's busy with his work. He's an oncologist working in a clinic for treating people with cancer. But when I invited him to come, he gave us some time to prepare and to come, and because his schedule is tight, we'll give him, every time he comes, we'll give us 2 talks, not 1 talk as we used to, okay? So some speakers will not be able to get them frequently, so instead of giving them chance to speak once, we'll give them chance to speak for 2 topics. So if finish the first topic, diversity. It is an important topic. It is very important to the church in general, and churches in immigrant lands in general, here Australia, Europe, anything, because we're coming from different backgrounds and from different thoughts and different ages as well. So as Samah said, it is something need to digest well and work on it. Okay, take some time, but there is very well known quote, if we have different opinion, we still have to love each other. So different opinions does not mean that we ignore each other, as he said. Again, we welcome Samah for being with us here. I hope the attendance much better than what we have right now. I mentioned in the last 2 weeks that to start serving in Sunday school, one of the requirements would be finishing this kind of class or program, okay? Well, this is not the rules which I did or I enforce it, but all churches do the same thing. Nobody can start serving without we know his commitment, his knowledge, to be sure that he is serving the kids very well. So please spread the word. Next time, I think Abuna may be one of the speakers. Next time we will talk about some kind of Bible study thing. We didn't talk about the Bible for a long time, so we'll change, go back to the Bible. And the plan for Bible study for this class is we'll pick some very important servants in the gospel, in the Bible, and study their life and how we learn serving God through these characters, okay? This is the plan. So we'll pick major characters, major servant in the gospel. Okay. Any questions before we start the second talk?
Yeah,
yes, we will do. Yeah, we'll do.
No,
okay.
Before that, actually, I think
Yeah,
the next
before 12:30 actually.
I wanted
Okay.
to focus on diversity.
So
So the next
two.
is going to be probably, my guess, 5 minutes or so. So it's going to be pretty quick. So again, this is something that you would deal with a lot in your role as a servant, is anxiety. And if you look at statistics of anxiety, it's much more common than I thought it was, that 90% of US adults have experienced an anxiety disorder in the past year when they did surveys of a lot of people. And then about 1/3 experienced anxiety, significant anxiety problems in their lifetime. I remember, for example, I had a major anxiety breakdown I was taking final exams for medical school, just like I fell apart and kind of like, you know, like, and I remember those days very well. So a lot of us at some point would have had some issue with anxiety, either chronic or acute, would have like just happened, like, you know, because like of one particular like situation. Somehow it's more common in females than males. And in adolescence, so the most teenage years, about 1/3 of adolescents will have also anxiety problems. And what has been observed that generally speaking, the anxiety problems are going up. The possible reasons for this is higher expectations, kind of it's that now, I guess, you get better education than possibly like we got, that like I got, like, you know, like when I was in high school, but the expectations are higher. And professionally, possibly expectations are higher. There is, if you do sports, there is a lot of pressure, kind of there's a lot of competition. It's just that at my time, like sports were primarily a recreational activity. Like, you know, if you're into soccer, people just get together and play soccer. Now there is leagues and within the same club, different tiers for different like teams and like, you know, and much more competition. People take, like, you know, are a part of a team and sometimes take lessons outside of the team and do this and that. It's just that there is more focus for some reason on like every aspect of what we do, which just makes what sometimes would be a pleasant like thing to do, could make it a source of stress. Like, for example, I can tell you from personal experience, my daughter was like trying out for the middle school tennis team, which typically is not a big deal. I mean, like, you know, that's at some, like, I know because like I play tennis. One of my friends started playing in middle school, kind of like his coach saw him like throwing a baseball and was like, wow, you're really good at throwing the baseball. Why don't you join the team and we'll teach you tennis? You're going to be a good player. So that was how things were at, you know, like, you know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Now, most people on the tennis team had been playing for 5 or 6 years, like in a tennis club, and some people got cut from the team. And again, that's middle school team, so it's nothing like, like a very advanced. And I'm sure if you do in the sports, you see that like at school and like, you know, like in basketball, like whatever, like, you know. So there is a lot more pressure to succeed. And then one of the things that comes up a lot, and actually even Congress is addressing it now and is talking with the CEOs of like of different social media outlets. I know they just kind of grilled like the CEO of Facebook recently. Is social media is being constantly connected, just where your brain is on all the time, and just so anything that happens anywhere, like you know about it, you hear about it. So for some people, it makes it feel we're the scary place. It's like, and no matter how good you are, now on social media, you'll find someone much better than you are. So in the past, your community or kind of your standard was maybe, if you go to church, your church community or your neighbors or your school. Now it's the whole world. Like, you know, kind of, we watch with my kids, like a 5-year-old that does like 100 push-ups with weights and like, you know, like you see crazy things. So no matter how good you are, I mean, there is someone who's much, much better and it's in your face. And also people, as you know, are disinhibited in social media. So people can be much more hurtful, like, you know, much more in your face. So this all takes a toll on you. One thing, if you're, I don't know if any of you like psychology, one course I loved that is now available for free. It's the most popular course in Yale University. It's, I think it's the professor Scott Laurie Santos. It was made available during COVID for free. It's called the Science of Happiness. Basically, she presented all the psychology studies looking at what makes people happy and what doesn't make people happy. Like, you know, it's, and she went through everything that you can take, like think about how much money does like makes people happy, and how, looking at various things. And she talks a a lot about social media and kind of like relation to social media and happiness. So I would recommend to consider watching that course. It's an academic course, so it's again, it's all based on studies that looked at happiness, and definitely social media was flagged as one of the things that we have to be aware about in terms of like anxiety and at times. So this is important because you're going to deal with this with your Sunday school kids, is that they're going to be like probably several of them will have issues with anxiety related to so many reasons. Many of them are obvious, kind of that maybe people like having a hard time fitting in at school, kind of, you know, like making friends at school. People live between several cultures, Jordanian, Egyptian culture, and then you go to school, it's a different world. Like, so reconciling the culture of home with the culture at school, and being able to, I mean, you live at home, but then you need to fit in at school, and you don't want, no one wants to really stand out, kind of. It's like a silly story. Like, I know one of my friends had just come from Egypt, and he used to wear like a pullover, like the Egyptian style, kind of like wool pullover, and like, you know, at school kids used to call him pullover boy, like, you know, because like just he looked like different. So there's that kind of pressure, and sometimes unrelated to culture, just challenges arising from family dynamics. Parents are working all the time and stressed out, and stress out the kids. Or sometimes anxiety can be a genetic thing where people are more predisposed to anxiety. So you will see anxiety, you may have experienced it yourself, you may have seen it around you in the family and friends, and you will definitely see it in your Sunday school kids. So it's important to be thinking about it. Possible reasons for anxiety that is irritability. So that kid who is kind of obnoxious in Sunday school, not listening, irritable. Part of it could be anxiety. You should think about it. So it's not, you know, sometimes, look, and I did that as well. You just get annoyed at them, and like, you know, and that's it. But like, you know, sometimes the root cause for this is anxiety. Kids who are avoiding activities at school or at church, don't want to come to Sunday school. Obviously, there's other reasons for not coming to Sunday school, but part of it could occasionally be anxiety, that they're just trying to avoid things. And then you hear from their parents that even at school they don't want to go, or they don't want to participate in activities. They're good at sports, but they don't want to be part of a team. Because, again, there's other reasons for this, but anxiety could be one of those reasons. Dropping grades, someone who was doing well and suddenly starts to drop his grades, part of it could be anxiety related to something that happened, trouble sleeping at night, someone who complains about fatigue, headaches, or stomach aches. So there is symptoms that sometimes kind of are a manifestation of anxiety. So these are all features that you should think about, kind of. Again, they don't only indicate anxiety, but like sometimes, all right, I think at times you should think about anxiety as one of the reasons for those symptoms. I mean, we don't expect you to be a psychologist. Like, you know, there's people that kind of live all their life studying these kind of things. But I think the most important thing you can do as a servant is to identify it, and if it's something you feel you can handle, that's fine. But or maybe bring it up to somebody else's attention, because at times, like, people need to seek professional help, like, for it. But how can you handle anxiety if you see it? One of the most important things for most kids is community, is to feel that they have a safe community. I can tell you, someone in, like, you know, one of the children in our family had problems with being very shy. Kind of part of it was anxiety as well. Her teacher went to her and was like, hey, there's another girl in the class who is like new and is very shy. Can you please reach out to her and try to make her feel comfortable? So she empowered the girl that I know to reach out to someone, like making her think that she's helping her. And she was really helping both kids, and those kids became very good friends. And this made a huge difference in terms of their experience at school. So this is an example of what you could do, is maybe connect kids in a tactful way that where they don't feel that you're providing therapy to them. It's kind of, hey, can you spend time with that kid? Can you help them? Or maybe organize, like, you know, groups in the class where people would spend time with each other, that maybe this would be a way where you can connect people, like, with each other, or figure out if you're going to do activities or something like that. Community is one of the best ways to relieve anxiety, to provide an outlet for people to talk to, especially people who don't have such community at school or in the family. And part of it is to get to know the kids, is figure out what they like, how can you reach out to them, how can you connect with them, how can you connect them with other kids. Some kids here, like, I'll use tennis again, as like, you know, one of their servants used to take them out, like, play tennis, or bowling, or whatever, like, you know, whatever you can come up with. Sometimes it's like, if you feel things are complicated and it's not something that you feel comfortable handling, is to engage kind of someone else, one of the more senior servants or abuna, that many times if things are complicated, then they need professional help. But, you know, even, like, you know, in our church community, there is people, like, we have psychiatrists, psychologists, or we have people that can put people in the right direction of, like, what kind of help to seek. So I would bring it up to whoever is your kind of servant, like, lead, to possibly get more help, or reach out to the family. They can reach out to the family to maybe recommend to seek attention, or to seek professional help. And it's nice to also use the scriptures. One of the very comforting thing about the Bible is that there's like so many things about anxiety, because it's a universal problem, it's a timeless problem. So I intentionally did not put any verses about anxiety, but one thing I would recommend when you're preparing for, like, your service is, and you can even go on Google and type in biblical verses about anxiety, and they're very comforting, even for you. I mean, you're like, you know, they provide a lot of comfort, and it's good to kind of know these verses or have them available to share them with kids, maybe as part of the lesson, as part of, like, an activity or something like that. But there is a lot of comfort in the Bible that addresses anxiety, because really many times, kind of, like I said at the beginning, anxiety is related to pressures of the world, pressures that, hey, you need to do this in sports, and pressures that you need to achieve certain things in professional life or at school. And the Bible changes completely your perspective about this. Kind of one of the things that I like about, like, you know, like, that I heard, that, you know, the sermon on the mountain, when Jesus took people on the mountain, is part of what the sermon did, is took people up high so that they can see the world down there as very small when they were at the top of the mountain. So you start, your perspective changes, like, you know, when, like, you are with Jesus at the top of the mountain, and the things that could be anxiety provoking, the things that could be a stress in your life, end up getting smaller and smaller. It would be very nice if we can paint that picture to, like, Sunday school kids in whatever way is appropriate. Like, again, there are so many verses that kind of help kind of put people in that mindset. So I would strongly recommend, again, for you, for your Sunday school class, is to look up verses about anxiety. You know, I feel I need them many times, and I'm pretty sure that your Sunday school kind of students will also benefit from them. Okay, and so that's it for this. I intentionally made it kind of a shorter lesson, because I think kind of I know we're going to spend a little bit more time on the first one.
Can I ask you a question about anxiety? Is there can we say there is kind of spiritual anxiety? Anxiety specific to those who come to the church? You think something can be like that? Like what?
means you care. You care about your spiritual life. You care about your church.
Exactly. Some people say that I committed a sin. Is my sin forgiven or not? Is my faith right or not? Is my domination it right or not? And some questions like that can get to anxiety to some people also. So remember, an anxiety not only for physical topics but only for spiritual people. And a lot of people in churches suffer from what they can call spiritual anxiety. Okay, and we will deal with some kids like that. Okay. If I did something wrong, God will be kind of mad of me. Very, very common question. Okay. God loves me or not? Okay. If I did something wrong, He will hate me if He loves me before. And these kind of questions. Okay. So think about this. Is this right, Sam? We have another comment about spiritual anxiety. Yeah. I'm not saying Christian, but it's just spiritual part. Okay. Thank you for coming. I hope we see more to come next week. And thanks you, Samah, for your time. I appreciate your effort and your work on these two topics. We'll broadcast this. It's already broadcasted, but we'll put the PDF and PowerPoint presentation on search website as well. Okay. Amin allelo ya duk sabatri kayo ke arunir mati kai ke sosio nastonio na mi koshte volendo emos de mari viknain fikirin o soften de o sotemono naina kireison kiria no gison ami mismo erois tania tuni ebon our Father art in heaven. سيب انت بالحاجات دي كلها انا هتصرف لا روح انت انا